just like completely screwed up. We took a dream vacation to Italy, but I was kind of afraid of getting my camera robbed.
As you should be, because we know 2 people that have been robbed lately.
And I thought, oh, my phone will probably be good enough.
Okay, well, I screwed up too because I'm optimistic and lazy. So I didn't bring my real work camera, and I regret it too. And so we wanted to share our mistakes with you, like we always do, because we feel like there's a time and a place for just bringing your phone camera. This wasn't it. So we wanted to go over the limitations, how to get the most out of your phone, but also why your camera is just superior still, despite all of the software technology being implemented into our phones. This is the Picture This Photography podcast, and twice a month we cover the latest news, our biggest mistakes apparently, and all things photography. So if you're interested in that, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the video, or wherever podcasts are available to get the audio. Thanks so much.
Squarespace makes this possible. Squarespace is a platform to build your space on the web, something better than social media, your own custom domain, so you don't have to be at gmail.com anymore. That's way more professional than .com, right? It's also the best way to present your videos, your images, your business, or whatever you have. Get started today at squarespace.com/Chelsea with a completely free trial. Set it up free, see how beautiful it is. And when you love it, you can save yourself an additional 10% using the coupon code Chelsea.
That's CHELSEA. All right. We did not mess up with using Squarespace, but we did mess up by not bringing the right cameras or using them properly.
Yeah, I will say I was not going to bring a camera to Italy at all.
I thought that was crazy.
But we had multiple friends get robbed. And I have insurance, thank you PPA, but if you get robbed, you're gonna have to file a police report, and certainly your day of vacation, if not the entire vacation, is going to be messed up, right? Like, I didn't want to become a victim of crime. And that is kind of one of the benefits of a phone, is it has like anti-theft and stuff. You're just much less likely to be robbed than with a camera that's so easily stolen and resold. Yeah. But within an hour of us leaving for our flight, I decided to grab my Sony a7R5 and a 24-70.
Yeah, I feel like you had to just outdo me because I brought a Fuji X100V, which is just a small fixed lens camera, wide angle, which I typically love, but I'll talk about the mistake I made there. But I really felt like you were just one-upping me.
Well, we both ended up traveling with a camera, but it was still way less than we usually travel with. We usually travel with multiple lenses and a tripod, so we're just prepared for anything. And even that was enough for me to really appreciate the power of a camera.
This was a learning experience for sure.
Yeah. So one of the areas I noticed was my iPhone pictures didn't edit well at all.
No, and I don't think I really thought about how bad they would come out because I'm typically just using it around town and I'm satisfied with mediocre photos. But we were in Italy and I was in some of the most beautiful places taking pictures with my phone and just wanting to weep, really regretting a Chelsea from a week ago. Her choices were bad. The dynamic range is decent with software, but then the way that the phone like edits it is just really bad.
Well, here's the challenge. If you take a photo with your phone in standard mode, it's using computational photography, and it can use that to create pretty incredible dynamic range, better than even a full frame camera. And in fact, if you look at the picture that I took with my phone of the sunset and the picture that I took with my traditional camera, the phone picture actually looks better because it automatically raised the shadows. It stacked multiple images together.
But I don't like the way that the phone processes the images, so I put it in RAW to shoot RAW to get the colors that I like so I can edit it later, and then it takes away all of the computational photography and the live mode, which I like to select the key photo.
Yeah, and then your dynamic range is garbage because it's a tiny little sensor.
Yeah, so it's kind of a lose-lose. I either use it with the computational photography and get an image that's edited in a way where I'm like, whoa, this is just way too much, or I use it in the RAW setting, which you have to reselect every single time on the iPhone, and I end up getting pictures that don't look as good.
So I took a picture with my phone, but then I also bracketed pictures with my Sony. And you can see how much better the Sony image is than the phone picture. Like, if you zoom in, of course, it's more detailed, even though I was at f22. But also just like, look at the sun and how the sun has an actual shape and it has rays radiating out of it.
Yeah.
There's so much more contrast. The iPhone, the sun is just an ugly blob. And all the edges have like weird halos around them because it's trying to HDR process everything. And overall, the phone picture, once you look at it closely, it looks like garbage. But
I mean, it's fine. It's fine for just a memory.
yeah, like if you
But-
send it to your friends, like this is what I'm doing now, it would still look cool because they're going to glance and go.
Come on, you know, as a photographer, you look at a scene and you know what you want to end up with. And it just wasn't happening for me.
And we have big prints on our walls. We like to make big prints. And I would not make a print of that iPhone photo or any of the iPhone photos that I took.
Yeah, another issue that I had was the actual megapixels of the iPhone. Now, they boast really high numbers.
48 megapixels.
Yeah, but they're using what I'll just call marketing math, which is like they're basically dividing each pixel into 4 and finding some way, I don't even know how they're doing it, to say that they have 48 megapixels.
It's quad pixel. They just divide each pixel into 4, and then they market it as 48 megapixels. But usually when they read out from the sensor, they don't read out each of the individual pixels. They still just read out 12 megapixels. But even if they read out every pixel, it doesn't have color information, and the lens is not designed for 48 megapixels of detail because it's like this big.
Yeah, but so my thinking was that it didn't matter because I thought, I'll just post to social media. I'm not going to really notice the difference. But I did notice the difference because I'm a nerd and I love pixel peeping and I love zooming in and cropping and printing my photos. So I was really disappointed with the actual megapixels and the resolution available.
I regularly struggled because I can't adjust the aperture on my iPhone. Almost no smartphones have a variable aperture, and if they do, it's usually just 2 settings. Like one of the Sonys, you can go from like f2 to f4 or something like that. But the iPhone, you're just fixed at f1.7. And that means 2 things. One, I love to shut the aperture down all the way to like f22 when I'm shooting sunrises, sunsets, or anytime the sun's in the photo.
You like starbursts.
It turns the sun into a nice starburst.
Yeah.
It makes it a focal point instead of just like a contrast ruiner, right?
Yeah, but now you're making a compositional element in the photo. So it's not just about aperture per se, but your ability to be more creative with your photos.
That's what photography is,
Yeah.
right? And you can't do that with your phone. It's just fixed. The sun is always going to be a big blob and never a starburst. But a variable aperture also gives you the power to control your shutter speed, to slow it down. Because if you can only shoot wide open in sunlight, then your shutter speed is always going to be fast. All motion is going to be frozen. And that is such an important part of photography. Like these pictures of the carousel. If you just shot it at a high shutter speed, it seems like the kids are frozen still, right? Mm-hmm. So you choose your shutter speed. That is what storytelling is in photography, and an iPhone steals that from you. You cannot shut the aperture down and use a longer shutter speed.
I think it's really great for someone who just wants to capture a moment and say I was there. I was happy with it in situations where we were out to dinner or something and I wasn't trying to get a good photo. I was just like, I'll remember this moment and the date and the time and what we looked like. I was happy with that. But once I had to actually be creative and take a picture I liked, I ran into all sorts of problems. One of them was the ability to zoom when I wanted to isolate a subject, especially if you're in a busy tourist location and there's people everywhere and you want to zoom in on something and get some really beautiful background separation. I could zoom with my phone, but the quality just went all wonky and it didn't look good and I wasn't getting a crisp subject separation, so I'd just end up not even bothering.
Yeah, with my
Made me
Sony,
sad.
I attached a 24 to 70 zoom. And that means I can zoom to anywhere in that whole range and I get the full like 60 megapixels of my camera. But with the iPhone, you have just separate prime lenses. And everything in between those primes, like everything in between 24 and 77 millimeters on my iPhone 14 Pro Max, then it's just cropped. And
Yeah.
by the time you're cropping to like 70 millimeters, which is an extremely common focal length, you're at something like 2 megapixels.
And that's why it makes me concerned that with the new iPhone, they're cutting out the 70 millimeter lens on the iPhone Pro Max.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll just have more cropping and not the crispness of at least their prime lens.
Right. You're right. They actually made the image quality worse from 77 to 120 millimeters.
Well, but I think I know you already made a whole video about that, but I think that just goes to show that it's not really a tool for photographers. It's for people that want to take pictures. We need more control than that. And there's so many ways that it fell short. There's so many times when I was just taking standard pictures any photographer would take, like into the sun. You're taking a picture of a beautiful sunset over the Arno River in Florence, and you have the bridges in the background, and you have your blob sun for one thing, because you can't change the aperture. But then the optics aren't very good. There's lens flare everywhere. Some of that is because my lens is always greasy, because I'm always like touching everything. And
Which it will be, because it's in and out of your pocket.
Yeah, and I always clean off the lens. I know that's a problem for other people because I see it. But the other issue is just that you're getting a ton of lens flare. You get that green blob and everything. I guess you could take that out. I got more sweeping lens flare that just kind of did not look good. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing. And it's not crisp like my good glass. I know a lot of you were thinking like, no crap, Northrops. Of course the phone's not good enough. But this is when I really started to appreciate how great my cameras are compared to the phone still.
But Apple's still going to do that marketing math. I see the big billboards shot on iPhone. They do magazine covers and stuff. And yes, you could create scenarios that were ideal for capturing on an iPhone, but they're not sunrises and sunsets shooting into the sun. That is for sure. They're always going to be at 24 or 77 millimeters or whatever the prime lenses are. They're never going to be between those focal lengths. And in the real world, especially in travel, you don't get to stage shots to be ideal for the camera that you're using. You get to respond to whatever the conditions are, and you just try to do the best. And those are areas where the traditional camera drastically beats a smartphone.
Absolutely. And just the usability is different too. Like, one thing that I overlooked is that taking pictures isn't just a hobby or my job, it's how I actually experience the world.
Yeah.
I get fully immersed in a moment when I look through the viewfinder and I can visually block out all the distractions, and it's like I get this tunnel vision in a good way where I'm really taking in these little pieces of the moment. That's why I love it. And I'll even say, even when I don't have my camera on me, I'm still trying to do that where I'm like, oh, that moment. Let me try to just like edit that in my mind to just savor it. The viewfinder on a camera is something that helps me do that. I'm looking through it, I'm blocking out all distractions, I'm honing in on what I like to look at. And like, even though the screen on the phones are really good, it wasn't the same, and I missed my viewfinder when taking pictures and also when looking through and reviewing pictures and zooming in and stuff.
And as somebody with less than perfect vision, I appreciate the viewfinder because it has a diopter and I can dial in perfect vision. So when I'm looking through the camera or reviewing my pictures on the viewfinder, I see it perfectly sharp. I know exactly what I got. When I'm holding up the iPhone, I don't see that perfectly clear.
I didn't even think of that if your vision's not perfect, you don't have the diopter
It's
available.
such a benefit, yeah.
Is that why you wear your glasses so much, or was that a whole different issue?
No, that was part of it. And even then I'm like taking my glasses on and off, but the camera solves all of that with the viewfinder.
Thanks, cameras. We were like, really, this is our love letter to cameras because we just missed them so much.
Well, they get beat up so much because everybody loves their smartphones, and the smartphones are great. We'll talk about that in a bit, but the cameras are irreplaceable.
Yeah, it's like you don't know what you have until it's gone.
And compositionally, a huge benefit is the tilt screen on traditional cameras, because with the phone, you hold it up in the same way, right? You hold it like this, and then everybody around you gets the same photo because we all just hold it at eye level and take a picture, horizontal, vertical, but usually vertical.
Yeah,
but
you could hold it up, but then the screen, you can't really, you're pointing at something and you can't see it.
Right, yeah, the screen is always like parallel to whatever you're taking.
And that's when you miss your tilt screen. And that's also what I meant by like my X100V Fuji doesn't have a tilt screen. So there are a lot of overlapping issues between the camera I chose and the phone. And I am very short, and I was trying to shoot above the crowd, and I just couldn't do it.
With the Sony, one of the first things I'll do taking a picture is I flip that screen out. And that encourages me to hold it down low, or to hold it over my head, or to hold it vertically, or whatever, but to find the ideal composition for that scenario, which is not usually just the height that I stand at, right?
Yeah, you're getting a different view.
But that's what photography is. It's finding a different way to see things than the way everybody else sees it.
I know. I ended up getting really just run-of-the-mill mediocre pictures because I didn't have all that stuff. And I think what it really boils down to is that if you are a photographer and you're used to taking those pictures, you're used to an element of control. And I know which pictures I can get with my camera. I know what picture I need to get in camera to edit it later to be the picture that I want, to not blow out the skies, to get more color in a sunset. So just found myself just really sad that I couldn't adjust my aperture for starbursts, that I didn't have the same dynamic range, that I couldn't lift it above my head, that I couldn't hide away in the viewfinder. And yeah, I admit my mistake. I know that I was being lazy and I didn't want to carry around a heavy lens and body, but I really think that it would have been worth it.
Yeah, and just the tactile experience of having a proper shutter button, of adjusting the exposure compensation with just a flick of your thumb, instead of like trying to poke at the screen while you line up your thumb to push the volume button or lock button or whatever it is that causes it to take a picture of the stupid flimsy shutter button that they try to give you.
I missed
It's
all my
such
chunky
a
buttons.
miserable experience. But I also feel like my phone's always in my pocket, whereas my camera's around my neck. So my camera's actually quicker and easier to use, so you grab shots more quickly.
Yeah, I was using the X100V and I got some of my favorite photos with that. I did have that around my neck, but it's like a 24 millimeter lens on there, so I still wasn't able to zoom. It's not, you know, it doesn't have the sensor like my Sony Alpha 1, so I didn't get the dynamic range or anything like that, so I was still a little bummed with that, even though it was more fun than my phone.
All right, well, we've kind of been talking smartphones a lot,
Well, good. They're getting a lot of attention. Somebody's got to do it.
but we do want to talk a little bit about the situations that they're right for, because you're going to have your smartphone anyway, and they're one of the tools in your tool belt, right? So you should know how to use it. So we'll give some tips for that after we thank our sponsor, Squarespace.
If you want your own website, portfolio, or store, you can make it happen with Squarespace, and it's super easy. I can drag and drop in and make one in like 10 minutes. You should time me. But you can do it too, and you can do it completely for free. No credit card needed. You don't have to remember to cancel. Just go to squarespace.com/Chelsea, set up your website, drag in some photos, have some fun. You're going to like it. And if you decide you'd like to keep it, you can get 10% off with the coupon code Chelsea. I set up a gallery and I've sold prints, which is very fun. You can book appointments. You can one-up yourself by adding new photos, which I won't be doing because I messed up my whole photo trip by being too optimistic and stupid.
You deliver your photos to your clients there. You have like a client gallery.
Oh, that's true. I have done that. It's really easy to use and it looks professional. So try it out and then tell me if you like it in the comments, because I know you are. And I know you hate hearing the plugs, but you're going to like it.
Thanks, Squarespace.
All right, so we've already like trash talked the phones, but you're going to have your phone on you anyway, so you may as well learn how to get the best pictures and also understand when they're the right choice.
I have a whole tutorial for the iPhone specifically, sdp.io/tutorial. You'll find like more than 50 camera tutorials, but the iPhone is one of those cameras because I do consider it to be a real camera. Besides just learning all the controls, how to change things manually, I suggest getting one of the recent smartphones and judging their photography capabilities based on that. Like get an iPhone 14 Pro and see what that does, because so many people use an iPhone 7 and it took terrible pictures, and like smartphone pictures suck.
That's a
They're
lot of
invisible.
money, Tony.
Well, they are expensive, but this is the camera that you have with you all the time. Every photographer I've ever known uses their smartphone to take pictures all the time. It's not a question of whether or not you'll take pictures with your smartphone, it's just will you also add a traditional camera to it?
One thing that I really like about the smartphones that I've been begging camera companies to bring into cameras is the usability. And that's like, you have the anti-theft, which deters theft. It still happens, but it's less likely to happen. You have instant backups. Everything goes to the cloud. It's discreet, so you're probably not getting targeted for having expensive camera gear. That's nice. It's waterproof. You can share right away, and you have GPS tagging on where all of your pictures are, which is awesome.
Oh, it's so cool to go to the map, and we can zoom in and see exactly what street we were on.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to return to a place.
Absolutely. So those are the features that I really like. And in fact, I'll use them in tandem with my camera. So if I'm taking pictures of a place, I'll take a picture with my phone to have the GPS tag and just have that whole part be easier.
And the screens are so bright. So many times. I mean, I can use the viewfinder on my Sony, but I kind of have to because I can't see the rear screen at sunlight.
Yeah, you know what else I use them in tandem is when like I want the better picture with my camera, but I just want to share a crappier version with my phone. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'll just show that one to my friends in the group chat, but my real photo, I'll edit it later and do all that later. It's more complicated, but that's what we signed up for.
It also really pays to understand how computational photography works on smartphones, because smartphones, when you take a picture, they actually will take like a dozen pictures, sometimes more. And then they apply a bunch of processing. Like they will take one fast picture and use that to freeze action, but then they'll stack a bunch of longer exposures to try to reduce noise and to improve dynamic range. And in that way, a small sensor can outperform a much bigger sensor.
Until you put it in RAW mode, and then you lose all of that because you don't like those ugly colors. Sorry, this is supposed to be the hype up part of the podcast. I forgot. I'm still trash talking.
But part of understanding computational photography is understanding its limits. And I ran into those limits because iPhone actually amazing in low light, especially in a city. You can just take gorgeous pictures that have no noise, handheld. You can do like 8-second pictures of the stars handheld. It's amazing, but only when things are still.
Yeah.
So we were in the city with your friend, and I took some pictures of you two together. You hadn't seen each other since like high school.
Yeah.
And you wanted to do a shot where you walked towards me. And that's where everything fell apart. It was fine when you were holding still. As soon as you started walking, then it became all blurry because it could not stack multiple images of your faces, and thus the still background looked good and your face looked all messed up.
I did not understand the limits of the phone at that point, and now I know. No motion pictures, not great.
But I had
Low
in my
light.
head like, okay, it's pretty good at low light because I had done still shots.
So you forgot about all that stacking as well.
Yeah.
Could have been the wine, honestly.
There was a lot of wine.
And maybe it represented how I feel. It was interpreting the scene. So why would you choose your phone after we trash talked it for like an hour?
No, there are definitely times.
Yeah.
Like we went to some high crime areas, which are pretty much every tourist area. They get targeted specifically for camera theft, right? So for those times, I just brought my smartphone so I wouldn't be a target.
Well, this was our thinking, okay? So I started this by admitting I made a mistake. But in the moment, what I was considering is that I had no plans of adding anything to my portfolio or making big prints. So I thought, why deal with all the extra megapixels? If that's absolutely true, then I think you can get away with it. I have since learned if I'm going to a beautiful spot, I'm going to want to share better pictures. I also don't want to hold up the group often. Now it's Tony, so I should have realized I'm never holding up Tony. If I take a picture, he's usually like, I'm going to take that same picture. So that's not going to happen. But if you're in a large group of people and you don't want to be always straggling taking photos, maybe it's just your phone. And then it's light to carry. Like, oftentimes I don't want to bring my big camera because it's around my neck and my neck gets sore. We walked like 8 miles a day in Italy. And that would have been a lot of weight to have around my neck.
Yeah.
But I could have planned by having a backpack and carrying it in front so someone couldn't steal it or something. And then another situation is when you know you will exclusively only be sharing small format. Like you're just sharing on social media and it's not going to matter. I think that's probably okay. But I don't think any of these apply to me because I cannot chill. And I was just so disappointed. How about you? Do you think you'll make this mistake again?
No, but there are definitely times when I will choose to leave my camera at home. You know, if it looks like there's going to be rain in the forecast, we've wrecked a few cameras because it suddenly started raining.
Yeah.
Or if I'm going hiking, I wouldn't normally hike with a full camera because that's going to be a mess and I might damage my camera. It's really nice to have the phone in my pocket.
What about when we go to dinner and then people in our town ask where we're from because we have our cameras?
Yeah, anytime you don't want to look like a tourist.
When we just are such nerds. I think that there's a time and a place for a phone. I'm going to have it on me anyway, so of course I'm not going to miss that. But I don't ever want to travel without my primary, full-size, big camera again. It's just not in me. I can't do it. It was too painful. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I found myself really stressed. Even that I didn't have a decent tripod with me, I missed having a super wide angle lens. And there were definitely times when I wanted to go more telephoto than 70 millimeters. And so now I'm back to like carrying around the Holy Trinity and a tripod. And that would have been enough that I would have had to check a bag, but that's what I should have done. It was a mistake.
We shoot the same camera now. And so we could share lenses for the first time in many years. And that means you could carry the tripod and the 70 to 200, and I could bring the 24 to 70, and we could really have a good thing going.
Yeah, and that means that whatever situation we're in, you grab the appropriate lens.
Yes.
And I'm stuck with a lens that doesn't match the right focal length.
Chivalry and marriage. Okay, and you signed up for it.
It was easier when you were shooting Canon.
Thank you for watching our podcast. If you want to see more podcasts about photography and probably our mistakes, be sure to follow the Picture This Photography podcast. And thank you, Squarespace, for making this podcast possible and for making wonderful websites possible. If you want a website of your own or a portfolio or a store, just a cool place to brag about how cool you are, go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and try it out. And you're going to drag and drop it and you're going to say, that Chelsea Northrup was telling the truth. This is so easy and fun. Could I be a Squarespace maker for my job? Maybe. And then you're going to sign up and save 10% by using the coupon code Chelsea. And that's just how I see it going, visually in my mind.
I'm still laughing about how you said it's a space for you to just talk about how cool you are.
You could. That's what you do. I read your about page.
I don't know how it got turned back around on me.
I'm roasting
I
you
guess
today.
I had it coming.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.